We haven't really talked very much about this, but the state of New York and the state of California and the state of South Carolina are all advancing bills in their state legislature that in theory would allow college athletes to profit off their names and likenesses. And last week, a clip of Tim Tebow went viral where he's defending the existing college mantra in terms of the college system and talking about why it mattered so much to him, why it matters so much to teammates, and everything else. And many people disagreed with that on social media, but it got the ongoing discussion of should athletes be paid in college, in particular football and men's basketball players, which are the only two athletes in college that really have value. And so I've got an idea. I want to bring in the crew, and I want you guys to listen to this idea. I want you to tell me if this is genius or insanity. We have this question that arises quite a bit when I have ideas. So I imagine that a huge percentage of our listenership right now used to play EA Sports NCAA college football. You could play all the different college football teams. They didn't have the official names of the players, but they had players whose likenesses very much resembled. They oftentimes wore the same numbers. They had the same attributes, the same sort of skill rating overall as the actual players did. But because they were amateur, their actual names were not used. The last time that game was produced was 2013. It was a casualty of a lawsuit that was filed, which ended up getting some players compensated for that video game, but it ended the video game as existing. All right? Here is my question. I think the NCAA needs to be somewhat flexible on this names and likenesses related issue. But to me, the way to address it, honestly, is to be flexible, not to be dogmatic. I also don't think that it makes sense to allow every state out there to put out their own rules about what rules will govern their colleges. So I don't think it's fair for California to say, hey, guys can make money, they can have endorsements, and for it not to be legal in any other state, because that would theoretically give an advantage to UCLA, Stanford, Cal, all the different schools in California. And I also don't think it would be fair if, for instance, the state of Alabama said, hey, we love college football more than any state in the nation, and that's true if you look at television ratings. And as a result, we're going to say, you get all the benefits of a scholarship to play football for us, but also every player at Alabama and Auburn gets $100,000. By the way, that might be less than they actually make to play at Alabama and Auburn now, but let's presume that they're getting nothing at all. That would not be fair, because if you were recruiting in another state, you would say, wait a minute, why does Alabama get to pay all of their players $100,000 in addition to giving them a scholarship? So you don't want state legislatures and politicians involved in trying to set the rules by which we play college sports. I don't think that's a good idea. But I do think that there is a substantial dollar figure out there that is not being tapped right now. And this is a big deal for me because I think about life. I think there are two different ways to think about life. Many different ways to think about life. But in this particular arena, there's two different ways to think about life. There are two kinds of people when it comes to business, right? There are people out there who believe that everything is a zero sum. In other words, in order for you to succeed, you have to take from somebody else. This, to me, is a very East Coast mindset. If your kid's going to get into this college, then somebody else's kid is not going to get into this college. There's a pie, and the pie's not growing, and whatever slice of that pie you get is something that you're taking away from somebody else. That's a very East Coast mindset. In my experience, having lived on the East Coast, that is the mindset that governs on the East Coast. It's competitive, but it's competitive in a way where in order for you to succeed, you have to take something from somebody else. The other mindset, which I think is the one that I embrace and I see the world through, is why don't we just make a bigger pie? Instead of trying to fight over this slice of pie that is not changing and it already exists and I want more of it because I'm still hungry and you want more and we're going to fight to the death over it. The way I think is let's make a bigger pie. And this would be, to me, the way the West Coast thinks. It's not that the West Coast is not competitive like the East Coast. It's that the West Coast is trying to think about growing things. That's kind of the whole purpose of Silicon Valley, right? Creative destruction. We might kill this business, but we're going to build a bigger business around it. And so I am a guy who tries to think of things in terms of growing the pie. Instead of trying to take somebody else's slice, which is, I think, the mindset that dominates on the East Coast, I want to be on the West Coast and let's think bigger. Let's try to create new opportunity instead of just trying to fight over the same opportunity we already knew existed. And so with that mindset in your thought process here, tell me what you think about this. Why wouldn't it make sense for the NCAA for once in their life to be forward-thinking and to decide to bring back this video game, this college football video game, to take it out to all the different video game companies and say, we got a couple of ideas for how you can make money with us. Either we pay you a set fee to develop this game, and we take all the profits, and we give all those profits to the college athletes in exchange for using their names and likenesses in this video game, which we will primarily sell digitally because we know people are desperate to get this video game again. And we'll let all the kids, all the scholarship athletes in every FBS school who's going to be in this game be able to equally participate in it. Or you take the risk of building this game and you can make all the money on the premium add-ons. If you got kids, or maybe you play yourself, you know that Fortnite, for instance, is a free game. Anybody can go download Fortnite. The way they make all the money on Fortnite is by add-ons. You know, you buy a new battle axe. You buy a new, I think they call it skin, right? Like what you look like. All of those things are insanely valuable. Fortnite has made billions of dollars off of that. The point here is all of the profits that derive from this video game that the NCAA member institutions would otherwise receive go straight to the college kids who are in the video game. The kids get their name, their likeness, their skill level, just like it's Madden. They would think, I think it's badass. If for some reason you don't want to be included in this new college football video game, you sign a form and you're out. You don't want your name and your likeness in it, boom, you can withdraw from it. You don't have to do it. And then you could, if this thing goes well, like I think it would, every single player could get up to $10,000 just from being in a video game per year. I think it's genius. It's also a good pilot program which would allow the NCAA to test this names and likenesses aspect. Because here's the deal. I don't think you want individual players out there trying to sign endorsement contracts with car dealerships. First of all, you can't use, for instance, the school logo. It's a lot of complexity. But I do think if you took the money that exists out there in the names and likenesses universe and you put it all into a big pool and you distributed it evenly to all of the scholarship athletes in that sport or in that conference, however you wanted to structure it, I think it could make a ton of sense. All right, I want to bring in the crew and get your immediate reaction to this idea. And I wrote about it. If you're curious and you want to go read about it, I wrote about it. It's the lead article up right now on OUTKICK.com, OUTKICKTheCoverage.com, the website that I run. What's your thoughts on this, Danny G?
I like it. I would buy the game. I last played NCAA football back in 2010. Michael Crabtree was on the cover, Texas Tech in the house. And I ran my offense with Mark Sanchez. Loved that game. I would definitely buy it, and I think it is a great way to provide some means for the players.
Yeah, Denard Robinson, I believe, was the last cover athlete of NCAA college football game. What about you, Dub? I bet you played this game, even though it had not been around for a while.
I miss this game so much. I'm not going to lie. This was like my childhood, playing this game with my buddies. It probably is my favorite game of all time, and I was absolutely crushed when they decided to discontinue it. But I love the idea. I mean, anything to get this game back is good with me, and I agree with you. It gives sort of a groundwork for the NCAA to work with in terms of being able to compensate some of these players.
Yeah, and again, the way that I would think about it is the NCAA, I think, is being very dogmatic and saying we're not going to allow this. But I don't know why they can't be more flexible in their thinking here and use something like this as a pilot program to create value that is already out there in the marketplace. See, I'm a capitalist, right? I understand some people today, it's like, oh, you can't be a capitalist. Capitalism is the greatest economic system that has ever been created in the history of the world as it pertains to creating higher standards of living. There has never been, whatever you want to be from an economics perspective, maybe there will be something that will be created that is better than capitalism. So far, it never has in the history of humanity. So if you want to lift the most people possible out of poverty, capitalism is the best possible system to embrace, all right? It's not without flaws, certainly, but when the flaws are the rich people are getting too rich, it means that they're creating a lot of value, all right? We can talk about the way to distribute money and assets and everything else. That's an interesting conversation. But in terms of just growing the pie, there has never been a better economic system than capitalism. So I am a capitalist. What's surprising to me very oftentimes is that people who are otherwise like me, capitalists, want to embrace this fundamentally anti-capitalistic ethos, which is, oh, the players should not get anything more than a scholarship. Well, why would you not want to grow the pie? Why would you not want to reach out to the marketplace? And here we know, I believe, that there is a huge demand for this video game. Players would like for it to exist. Fans would like for it to exist. It's great advertising for schools. Like, there's no one out there who is opposed, in my opinion, to this video game existing. And so if there is this market-based demand for a product that features these players, and if the players would love it, and if the fans would love it, why don't you give them what they like? This would be like if I were running this and I was the NCAA and I was doing this radio show, this would be like me coming on the radio show during football season and being like, hey, today I'm going to talk about women's track and field for 3 hours. And you'd be like, why are you talking about women's track and field? And I was like, well, I'm trying to spend an equal amount of time on every sport all fall. Tomorrow, we're going to do men's swimming. You'd be like, well, I'm never listening to that show. Why would you not give me what I want? Talk about football. Talk about football. I'll listen to your show every day for the entire fall. All I'm asking of you is when I hit the radio, when I get my podcast, when I put it on, I want to hear you talk about football. Okay, I'm going to serve the market. We're going to talk football every day on this show all the way through the Super Bowl. My promise to you. Will not be a single day we don't talk football all the way until the Super Bowl is over. That's because I serve the market. I'm a capitalist. I want to serve the largest possible market. I want to make as much money as possible. I want to grow the pie. Why wouldn't the NCAA do the same? Eddie, tell me that this is not a perfect pilot program to try and figure out how to tap into the value in names and likenesses in a way that is still fair to everyone and also lifts everybody who is a scholarship player in major college football.
Well, let me first echo the thoughts of Dub and Danny in that I also absolutely loved that college football game. As a matter of fact, I still have a PlayStation 3 and I have NCAA Football 10. I still play it over Madden. I like it. Love it that much. As far as the idea goes, look, I don't know about paying college athletes per se, but as far as paying them for their likeness and, jerseys that have their numbers and all that kind of stuff, I'm totally for that. I absolutely am in favor of that. So from that standpoint and the video game that we all love, I mean, I would love to see it.
It's a no-brainer, right? And this is something where if the NCAA did this, people would be like, oh, you know what? This is pretty forward-thinking of the NCAA. The NCAA,
but of course, that's
yeah.
I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah. But in general, the NCAA is an organization that does not get very favorable publicity. Right? Almost everything you hear about the NCAA in the media is negative. This would be something where people would say, hey, you know what? Good for them. This is a smart play. Roberto, are you all into?
Yeah, it'd be great. But NCAA is not going to let it happen. I mean, that's the reason why they got into this the lawsuit, right, with Ed O'Bannon, was because of the video game.
Yeah, that's why they had to cease it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, what happens so often, and this is I think not just this debate, but there are so many issues in America today where people are lined up and they're on opposite sides and they want to yell at each other, and they're so fixed into their arguments that the idea of trying to avoid that argument doesn't even occur to them. For instance, I'll give you a good bit of news that I saw yesterday. The number of abortions in this country, not going to solve abortion for you, don't worry. The number of abortions in this country have been cut in half since 1990. They are at their lowest level since Roe v. Wade became law in the United States in 1973. They have been cut substantially. And the reason why that has happened is because our birth control has gotten better. Our overall unintentional pregnancies are down dramatically. That is a net massive positive to America, right? But the people who are pro-choice or the people who are whatever, like whatever side of the abortion debate you're unlikely to change your mind, right? My argument would be that the way to get outside of these intractable debates, and pay or don't pay college athletes is one of those, and just about everybody out there has an opinion on that, is to try and move into a new paradigm. Try and avoid the usual arguments and think about ways to be creative and smart and capitalistic and allow the market-based economy to make smart decisions that take us outside of the usual ruts and arguments. And that's what I would argue the idea of this video game represents, is an opportunity to say, hey, maybe we could create something that our fans would like and that our players would like that has economic value and serves as a pilot program for how we could create more money using these players' names and likenesses. Because the way that I think right now is we're leaving a lot of money on the table and we have an opportunity to grow the pie. And right now what you're seeing is, instead of West Coast thought, and West Coast thought to me is about creative destruction, building something new, altering existing paradigms, you're seeing a lot of East Coast thought. And East Coast thought is about, we've got a pie, we already know how much space there is in the pie. If anybody gets anything more, then I get less. I'm not a limited pie guy, all right? I want more pie. I want to create new dynamic opportunities if I'm in this arena. And to me, bring the video game back, give the people what they want, and let the players profit off of it. It's a great idea that could be explored and should be explored. Think about it a little bit. Just, that's my olive branch to the NCAA. You don't even have to pay me anything for it. I'm just trying to make you not be the biggest grumps in all of sports and actually be forward-thinking for a change.